Hey there, and welcome to today's episode. I'm so excited for you to get to know our guest, Gerly Adrien. But before I hop into all the information about her and the incredible conversation that you're about to listen to, I just want to encourage you, if you haven't already, to go and subscribe to our newsletter. We have some really exciting offerings coming for the month of August. We have the ability for you to do these kind of hot seat coaching experiences with us for pretty good price, if I do say so myself. We're going to be trying to do some more group opportunities, and then also we're going to be doing some more on our social media feeds to be bringing some of this coaching experience and some of this leadership development training to you in the palm of your hand through your phone. My goodness, sounds pretty good, huh? So I really encourage you, if you don't follow us on social media, head on over to social media. We are at Nikki Innocent on all the things. Head on over to our website, nikkiinnocent.com. And you can sign up for our newsletter there. There should be a pop-up that comes up, or if you scroll down to the bottom, there's a link called subscribe. You can click in there and you can drop your email in there. And if for some reason all of those things are a little too difficult and you head on over to social media, feel free to drop your email address in a DM to me, and we will make sure to get you on our mailing list so you can be the first to know about these hot seat coaching opportunities. And we're really just hoping that we can spend most of August really getting connected with those of you that are interested in the work that we're doing around women's leadership and diversity and inclusion. We've spent a huge chunk of the beginning / first half / a little bit more since we're in August right now, on some corporate work, which you've heard about if you've been listening to the podcast for a while. And we're really focusing on the importance of connecting with you. The reason that I left kind of my corporate space to start this company and to do this work was really to connect with people on a human level. And, as things go, when there's a lot of changes, and especially with kind of COVID and quarantine, there's a whole lot of things that shake things up in the world. And what we've realized is that as we focused really hard on the corporate side of things and creating some programming there, it's taken a lot of us. It's taken a lot of our time. And, that's what happens when you start a business and you're small. But also, we really wanted to just center around what we're here for. And so much of it is those of you that spend time to have a listen to this podcast and contribute through your ears and your time and give that time and spread the word. And so if you're somebody that's interested in working more with us, this is a really accessible way to do that. And we're also going to be doing, as I mentioned, we're going to be doing some stuff on social media where you have the ability, we're calling it Coach's Corner, to submit any kind of questions that you have around women's leadership, around diversity and inclusion, and you can shoot those over to us. You can shoot it to info@nikkiinnocent.com if that's the easiest way for you to go about it, but you can follow us on social media. We'll have very specific ways to do that because we want to be able to kind of answer the questions that are the burning questions for you. Okay, so again, newsletter, keep an eye out on the socials for all these great things that are happening in August. I am so excited to tell you about today's guest, Gerly Adrien. Now, Gerly is a fellow Bentley University grad. That's how I got to know her story, and how we got connected. So Gerly is so many things. I call her a multi-hyphenate individual. She's a business executive at a healthcare company, full-time, a property manager / landlord. She is an MBA student. She's a philanthropist, and she is a food entrepreneur who owns this amazing company called The Tipping Cow. It's an ice cream shop in Somerville, Massachusetts that features these incredible flavors of ice cream, and it's for people that are nut-free ice cream lovers. There's a lot of folks that might not have the opportunity to do that. So it's an inclusive ice cream shop. I mean, come on. So all of those things, right? I found myself being like, wait, Gerly, you'll hear me. I'm like, when do you get to sleep? But the thing that we talk so much about in this episode, and if you read any of the details around this episode before hopping on, you saw this. We talk about her political career. So Gerly was just elected in November of 2019, the first Black Haitian American city councilor at large for the city of Everett, Massachusetts, her hometown. And we talk so much about what that experience has been like, what led her to wanting to kind of step into this political sphere and how she got there and what she learned in her process of going into Philly to learn about this, and her time in financial services, what that kind of gave her in order to learn more about what she wanted to do and how she wanted to serve. And then we talk about the reality of what's happening today. So with everything that's happening with regard to Black Lives Matter and this uprising around racial injustice, we talk a lot about the dynamics that were at play before George Floyd was a name that everybody knew. We talk about the experiences that she's had being the first, the only, and the different. If you or anybody that's listened to or read Elaine Welteroth's book, FOD, First, Only, and Different, is something that is a very, very real experience for people who are having to kind of kick through doors that have historically been closed. And so we talk a lot about what the experience has been for Gerly to not only be the first Black woman, the first Haitian American woman, or the first Haitian American person, or first Black person, but also to be the first woman in that space. And I shouldn't say first woman. There are other women in that space, but to be a woman in this political sphere and to learn how to be heard for your voice, not for the way you look. And to break through these barriers, the systemic barriers, these oppressive barriers that operate within the institutions that we have all day, every day in our country, in our society that has a white supremacist dynamic to it, and then also a patriarchal dynamic to it. And so there's the intersectionality of the systems at play that can so often keep women of color silenced, keep women of color from being heard, but also from being in the room, just in the room, being represented, being considered. And so often that is something that, especially when we're talking about the election this year, that so many women of color, especially Black women, are so used to people being like, oh, well, it's election time, let me come talk to you. But in the in-between, when is your voice being heard? How are you able to express the things that are happening on a local level? We talk about that. So before I tell you every single thing we talked about, I'll stop here. And I'm so excited that you're here, and I'm so excited for you to meet Gerly. I'll catch you on the other side of this episode.
Hi, Gerly. Welcome to Checkbox Other. I'm so excited. So excited that you're here today. I'm fangirling already. I need to pull myself together. Well, so everybody I'm sure there'll be a little bit of a plug for you to get a sense of Gerly before we hop in here, but my favorite thing to do is to give you the floor, to give a little Cliff Notes version of your journey, any aha moments, any pivots, anything that like you didn't see coming that came that led you to where you are today. I'd love to hear from you all about that.
All right. So thank you again, Nikki, for having me today. My name is Gerly Adrien, and I'm a fellow Bentley alumni. I guess the Cliff Notes of my story is, I talk about how amazing, but how sad it's still we're still talking about being the first as a Black woman. And I'm the first in one of the most diverse cities in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And the challenges that I have going through that. I love politics. I could talk about politics all day, Nikki, but I have realized why people don't want to talk about politics. And also I'm a small business owner with my husband. We own a local ice cream shop, and just the magnitude of the little, ever since the Boston Globe article that came out about me, our business has shot up, and it's just been over capacity.
Too much, but we'll keep taking it. All right.
Right. So, and it's just amazing. I'm Haitian American. My parents immigrated from Haiti. So I always talk about being proud of being Haitian. And there's a reason why I always do that. And I'll talk about that more later on. But it's cool to see my dreams come true. For a long time, I wanted to be a politician. I wanted to be a small business owner. I wanted to work in an industry that was impacting people, which is healthcare. Yeah. And so to see all of that, and I'm 31, it's really amazing. It's really amazing. And people will be like, Gerly is this, and this. But I always say my most important title is to be there for you. And that's important to me. So that's a little bit about me and who I am.
I'm like covered in chills. That's my whole, when things are so deeply true, that's what happens. That was absolutely wonderful. And then towards the end, I almost got crying. We could cry right away. We get a little into this before the tears start coming.
Thank you.
I am, just for the audience, I am just so excited. First of all, Gerly, I was excited about you from what I knew from, I guess, internet, passing each other on the internet. I don't know if that makes any sense. But just for everybody here. So Gerly and I both went to the same school. We went to Bentley University. I got to know you from stalking a little bit of Bentley alums and the amazing Bentley alums are doing. A few years ago, I started a women's alumni network just because there was no real way for us to connect with each other, women that had gone to Bentley. And when I went to Bentley, it was about 30% women. So the numbers have, I hope, gone a little bit higher from a gender representation perspective, but from a racial representation perspective, hasn't moved. The needle hasn't moved much. And so to see a fellow Black woman, a fellow Haitian Black woman, and there was I'm like, yes. So I kind of creepy stalked you a little bit. And then I just couldn't, as most of the listeners know, I couldn't handle myself. I had to like fangirl all over. So I feel so many things that you said. And then also I feel like when I read your bio, I mentioned to my team, I was like, she's in her 30s. I mean, she's done all the things. What else is there to do? So I'm so excited to hear a little bit more about kind of what got you to all of these amazing spaces and all of these amazing titles that you have already accomplished. But also I'd love to hear a little bit, I mean, I heard you mention a little bit of this already, but in the podcast Checkbox Other, we talk about times in our life where we have felt like other or different or like we didn't belong. And so I'd love for you to share if there's one, two, however, wherever you want to go with it, a time in your life where you have felt other or different and how that's kind of impacted you to where you are today.
Yeah, so I'll tell you my first experience. And so after Bowling, everybody thought I was going to move to DC to do government consulting or something with the government. I love the government, right? And I decided to do something totally opposite. Decided to go to New York City and work for JP Morgan.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right. And everybody was like, Gerly, you know, working with, and I was on the trading floor, I was doing risk management, and I always felt like I was an other. I mean, primarily my reason for going was it was after the mortgage crisis. I wanted to understand like why these people who work at these banks can cause so much harm to low income to middle class families. So I was like, I'm going to go over there. I'm going to change the world. They're going to have to listen to me. And I just got a huge reality check. Like, it's all about money. It's all about who's in the room, what type of power, what's your title, how much money you have. And it was the most brutal 3 years I've had, Nikki. I think I cried every week in the bathroom. I was just, but I didn't know if it was because I was a Black woman, because there wasn't a lot of us there, right?
Yeah.
Or it was because I grew up differently. Like, people would just throw money at you. Everybody had money, right? They all lived in these nice apartments or condos and had nice cars. And I didn't grow up like that. I grew up low income. I had both my parents, but they were divorced. They came from Haiti. So they were still navigating through the US and raising 3 children, because I have 2 younger brothers. And I was the first to go to college, right? And I was first to graduate. And so it was just a very different climate. And I felt like an other all the time. And when I saw things that were happening that I wanted to question, because I'm just like, it was just like, don't talk. We're not listening to you, right? It was just like, that was my first time. And that was when I realized I always had this dream to run for office. But I said the only people that JP Morgan executives listen to were politicians. Whenever we had a politician come, they would stop everything and just go run to that meeting and kiss up. It didn't matter what color they were. It didn't matter what title they were. And for me, I always wanted to be like, you know what? You're going to have to listen to me and what I have to say, because I knew my heart always would come first. So that was the first time I felt other. And that was one of the reasons why I actually quit and decided to move to Philly to understand politics even more.
Okay. I hadn't, well, okay. I'm like, hold on. I had a whole other question was coming next, but okay. So I think I want to take one moment to kind of, to think a little, to just highlight what you just mentioned around kind of the power of the politician, because I feel like so often we don't necessarily understand the dynamics of how that power gets to play when we talk a lot about kind of corporate power and institutional power outside of politics. And then it's like, oh, well, you're a public servant. But, you know, even in my personal experience, so I used to work at Bain Capital, and while at my time there, one of the founders, Mitt Romney, ran for president, and also Deval Patrick came into being one of the managing directors, starting a new line of business while I was there. And it was really interesting because, again, it's all these, especially where I was sitting, it was all these people with a lot of power. And there's a lot of managing directors. So there's all these people that are the kind of the BMOC, big man on campus one way or another, mostly big man on campus, a couple big women on campus, but, you know, and exactly like you just said, just the ability. I remember I used to tell people, Mitt Romney never comes here, don't worry about it, during like the election time, because he hadn't been there since the 90s. And of course, at one point he walked through and I was like, I can't use that line anymore. And it was like, it felt like the Beatles had walked in, or something like that. It was such an interesting experience because, yeah, okay, there is money behind the politics, and there's obviously, there's super PACs and all those things that we have going on. But the view of power, when it is folks that value money first and foremost, to understand that political power has a level of equation with the financial power as well. So that's so interesting to me. And I love how you put that, because I don't know that I really looked at it that way.
It's the power of politics. And so when people are like, I don't want to have a conversation, or I don't believe in politics, I'm like, let me tell you, I could give you 11 examples how it impacts you right now.
Yes.
And you need to be involved.
So tell me, so you said you went to Philly.
Yeah.
And what did you learn? So one of my questions and my thoughts, especially, so you are city councilor at large in Everett, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And so you have a lot of power and your voice is being heard. So what did you learn about politics in Philly that have translated to kind of what you're experiencing today, as far as the role that you're holding and being, the highest vote getter, no big deal, and the whole dynamic?
Right. So when I decided to leave JP Morgan, I was like, man, do I want my life to be about just making money and just not happy at work? Or do I really want to talk about that impact that I feel like I was really supposed to do? And so I remember everybody, when I said I was going to quit my job and just move to Philly to go be a campaign manager for this young man who had no money, so I wasn't going to get paid. And I just recently bought a house and I had a mortgage, and everybody looked at me like, you are crazy. And I said, I'm telling you guys, if I go on this journey, I'm going to learn so much and it's going to help my future.
Yes.
And it was one of the best decisions I've ever did, Nikki. It was a big risk.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad I did it. I didn't get paid, but I helped raise him the most he's ever seen. We raised almost like $300,000 in a year. We got him so many endorsements. I met my husband.
Oh, hey.
Yeah. Right. But I got to see the ins and outs of politics on a whole different level, where it's really not about the people. If you don't have good people in office who can just shut it all down and say, enough is enough. We need to put the people first. And it was just the first level that I could see, wow, we have to have good people. And I was like, I need to go back home.
Yeah.
I only stayed for a year. And I said, I have to go back home and I have to fight for what's right in my hometown, where I grew up in Everett, Massachusetts. And I got to learn so much. Like, it was just so many different levels. And what was interesting in Philly is that Philly is mostly a majority Black, right? And you got to see Black elected officials, but their heart sometimes wasn't in the right way. And it was just frustrating, because you're like, wait, you grew up like the same way I did. How come you're not advocating for us? And then you got to see how money got to play into it. And so that's why I have a big rule with what I do, is that no matter what, even if I can't raise money to do whatever I want to do, if it like running a business or running for office, I'm going to find the money myself. People always ask me, like recently, they're always like, Gerly, you don't care about the way you dress, or if you don't put makeup on, or how you look. And there's a reason why, because when I was in Philly, my experience was, because I was so pretty, I felt like, talk to me in a different manner, and I was being used sexually in so many ways. And I hated that, and I always wanted people just to talk to me for who I was. And so I stopped caring about how I looked, in a sense, because I just always wanted people to understand how smart I was and how much I care about getting the job done, and that was it. And it just changed my view. Like, I stopped wearing, if you notice the way I would dress in Philly and then the way I am now, it's a big difference. Like, now I wear like t-shirts and like pants. Philly, I would always wear dresses and skirts. My hair always had to be done.
Yeah.
But I saw the way in politics, it's a male field, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was always put in situations where, man, do I really have to do this right now? And for the sake of the job, I felt like I had to, and I didn't like that at all.
Yeah, it's so funny. So a lot of the women's leadership work I do, and it's funny because I like went deep into this the other day, is about objectification and this experience as women, especially in male-dominated spaces, and even in female-dominated spaces when we're operating within a patriarchal structure, you still feel it. That there is this experience where you become dehumanized and you become a tool or a toy or an object to look at, and you become a sexualized being, or you become a woman, and whatever the aesthetic part of you matters way more than what you have to say and what you've experienced and what your story is and how you're showing up to represent the experience you've had before. Because really, at the end of the day, what we're looking at is what you look like and how much space you don't take up. Because if you start taking up too much space, then that's a problem. So it's so interesting that was your experience, both personally, but also witnessing it, I'm sure, witnessing it with others and in how others responded to you after you decided to stop kind of playing the game.
Right. And that's what it just felt like. Every situation was a game. It was like, okay, if you had more money and you can pay this amount of money, all right, I'll support you. I'll get more people on the ground for you. I'll change my view on the policy. And it was just like, oh, this is not how we should have elected officials act. Yeah.
And you were talking about kind of witnessing people be swayed by finances, be swayed by kind of, if I give you this amount of money, how will you change your vote? How will you change your stance? How will you change what you're doing? And how has that what's your mentality around when people kind of bring that financial power to the political power and think they can sway the voice that you've been elected by the people, finances or not, to be representative of those in your hometown of Everett?
Well, I always say for me, it's funny because most campaigns, you got to raise from $20,000 to $250,000, right? Last year when I won, I think I raised only $5,000. And it was way below what everybody thought, a person who can actually win and then to come in number one win. And it was just like, it goes back to how I felt in Philly. I never wanted money to sway how I was going to vote or how I was going to do things. So I said I was going to raise as much as I could, which was the 5,000. And then if needed, I will try to put in as much as I can. But at the end of the day, it's going to work out. And that's how I felt. It really did work out, because even my consultants usually charge like $5,000 to $10,000, and they only charged me $2,000. And I was just blown away by that. And they believed in me and they believed in the work that I could have done. And so everything I needed to do, like when it came to mailers or paying people or anything, it just all worked out. And I don't think we need to have big money play into how we make decisions or policies or even just how we campaign. Sometimes in politics, people decide who they want to spend their money on based off of their history of voting. And for me, I knew that wasn't going to be the case. Like, I knew I needed new people. I needed people of color to come out. And most people just tend to go talk to the traditional white voters because they're the ones who always constantly vote. So they most likely spend their money. But for me, it was like, you know what? I want to spend money doing some things that's not traditional. Like, we sent out text messages to people because we knew people look at text messages, right? Oh, yeah. Even if you don't like me or you don't know who I am, you got to read the message.
Right.
And so we did some things that were completely different, but we're glad we did it.
Yeah. And cost effective. And also, hey, we're in right now we're in 2020. Look at all the things we can do. Look how many people we can reach in the click of a button rather than having to send things out and hope they get where they've got to go. We hope we've got their addresses right and all that. Right. That's impressive. I'm excited about that. Okay. So one of the things that I mentioned this briefly earlier that I'm still quite having a hard time wrapping my head around is I call you in what I sent you ahead of time was how much I noticed that you're a multi-hyphenate human being. I feel like you encapsulate this more than probably anybody I've ever met. So you are a business executive at a healthcare company. You're a landlord. You're an MBA student. You have your own company, The Tipping Cow. You're a philanthropist and you're a public official. And do you sleep? Like when I read your bio, I was like, oh my goodness. So how do you, when you're making these decisions of things to get involved with, it sounds like obviously there's so much purpose, passion, and intentionality when you're making these choices. You know, how do you think about it? How do you think about allocating your energy, allocating your time, kind of trusting when it's the right time to make that choice and when it's the right time to maybe step back a little bit? Like, how does that decision-making process go for you? And I'm assuming for you and your family, because there's so many different dynamics of what's going on in there.
Right. My husband, I swear, I always remind him how much I am thankful that he is so supportive of everything I want to do. But yeah, I think, Nikki, the biggest thing for me is everything I try to figure out, what can I be really good at? What can I not be so good at that I could kind of not hide, but sort of like get away with? And then what can I improve on? And so with the council, I always talk about being a city councilor, you have to approve the budget, so approve any type of funding, so funding, council legislation, right? So policies, like what are you passing? And then C, constituent services. So when I looked at, okay, I only have a certain amount of hours in the day, right? What can I really excel in? I knew looking at my council colleagues that passing legislation that I would want to pass was going to be a huge challenge, which you got to see, right? In the Boston Globe article. So that wasn't my huge focus. My huge focus for like the first 6-7 months was constituent services and the budget.
Okay.
I'm a finance person, right? So I could explain the budget, how the money, where the money goes to anybody, any day. So I did that. And people loved that because they felt like they never had anybody do that.
Yeah.
And then when it came to constituent services, everybody knows, I feel like in the city of Everett, call Gerly. She's going to get it done. She's going to figure it out within a day or two. And that was something I excelled in well. I knew that I could throw in some legislation sometimes to see if it could pass. But I was trying to figure out like week by week, like so my aide is Renee, we had a timeline. We were like, okay, January is going to be, let's understand how the council works. February, we did our first Black History Month in Everett. That was amazing.
Oh, like wow.
we gave away scholarships. Like we wanted the students to understand Black history. And it didn't matter what color you were, Black, white, Latino. We just wanted you to delve more into what does Black history mean.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. We gave away 6 scholarships to high school students. They had to write and read the speech in front of their peers. That's
so cool.
Right. It was so cool. And while I was doing all of that, because that was my constituent services side, we were still trying to figure out, all right, what legislation could we pass? How can we make sure we're still on the ground? So I was still mailing postcards, sending out text messages, phone calls. And when you ask, how do I do it all? Like, right, I still work full time.
Yeah.
I do the council stuff. So I wake up at like 5 a.m, right? Usually. But I manage it all. Like I try to work from 5 to 2, 5 to 3. And then from 3 to 5, I try to do a bunch of council stuff. And then my husband usually comes home around later on in the evening. So I hang out with him.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I'm a landlord, right? And we're trying to do a new venture right now into properties. Of course you are. Yeah, right? My husband's like, you get bored, right? And then I just want more on my plate. And I'm just like, I like new challenging things. But it's cool. And I don't care about the titles. I think for me, it was always about like, I feel like growing up, people were always like I'll tell you one story which really inspires my drive. My father, right, immigrated from Haiti, and he was always told no. He wanted to go into business, right? He wanted to go to school. He was just always told no. So when I wanted to go into politics, when I wanted to go into business, he was like, girl, you can't do that. You're Black. You there's just no way. And for me, I was like, huh? No. I'm going to, right. And I just thought about how many other people think like that. And I always want to be not like an inspiration, but to be like a story about like, oh, you can do it. You can do it. You may not be the most perfect at it, but you can do it. Oh, yeah. And it's possible. So that's really, how I just try to manage everything. I just like, I get excited and I'm like, all right, how can I do well? How can I not do well? Let's just move.
Yeah. Be human. No way. You don't have to be perfect. What?
Right.
That's amazing. Yeah. I think a huge part of this, right, is, I mean, we hear this so often about the power of representation. And it doesn't mean that you have to be the absolute best and have done the absolute best you ever would at any point in your life. It's showing up and representing and showing up as fully as possible. And it sounds like that's what you do when you're walking into spaces and you're saying, hey, hold on, that doesn't seem right. That doesn't feel right. Or, you know, going up to people and saying, here's my number. Let me know what's going on. I got you when you don't necessarily have a seat at the table, or your voice isn't being heard by X, Y, and Z person. I have the ability to be in a room where my voice is heard. Maybe not as much as I would like for it to be at times, but I at least have the ability to amplify your voice.
And that's the most important why I do things, because even in my role, my full-time job, I'm the same personality, Nikki. Like, I am like, if I see something's wrong, I am calling it out. I'm trying to figure out, how do we fix it? What do we need to do? How can I sacrifice my time so that we can get this right? It's literally in me, and I love it. I love it. And that's why I think when the Globe, I remember when the writer, she's like, Girly, do you think you're aggressive? I said, yeah, I am. I am. I know I am, right? I'm not going to deny it. I know I am. But for me, it's just about getting things done, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think the interesting part too is, you know, as somebody that's grown up being told that I was aggressive, that I was bossy, that I was all those things, it's the power of a word has the ability to shift, right? So aggressive, a lot of times when used with women, isn't always a positive thing for some reason in our society. Even though you use aggressive with a man, again, we'll go to JP Morgan for a minute. How many movies have you watched where there are these amazing traders that are throwing things across the wall and just being, you know, so aggressive? And that is like the epitome of a successful person. But a woman is used in the same language, and that could not be a worse categorization of how she's showing up. And it's like, hold on, wait a second. Me showing up in my power should be a wonderful thing no matter what the color of my skin is, no matter what my sexual identity is, my gender makeup, any of those things. I should be able to be heard and have my voice heard. So I think that that's an amazing thing, because again, so often, even when you were talking about what your dad was saying about like, well, you can't do that because of this. It's like, yeah, I hear you, but I'm still going to stay in my own lane and understand where I'm coming from for it. So I understand those voices are coming, but I'm going to do my thing.
And that's what I think. I think that's an important piece. Like when we look at other people, and I always say this in my council meetings, I always talk about this. Oh, you let that person do that and I can't?
Real time. Yeah. Right. So, okay. So this Boston, and just listeners, the Boston Globe article will be in the show notes. So I really encourage you to go read it, because I thought it was a really interesting, not only because it was about you and I was like, yes, but also I think that the way that the reporter wrote about it, it was really interesting to see, kind of get that real-time kind of transcription vibe of how things are going. Because I think a lot of times when you see stories, especially in the news, a lot of times the story is told in between the script, like in between the quotes. And I felt like the quotes that were happening in there, I mean, to tell you that my eyes were rolling all the way to the back of my head is an understatement of what was happening. But you know it sounded, even listening, so reading/listening to what those quotes look like, you know, it just, like, your resilience in the face of you pointing out and saying, hey, so why is it okay for that person to do that and I can't? Or why am I always a problem when I'm talking about something in a much, you know, in a whole tone policed way that you don't have to, but for some reason it's okay for you to talk about these things when I'm not even just representing myself, I'm representing all these other people that have come in and told me this. Just talk to me a little bit about how you kind of think about that, because I can only imagine, you know, a big part of the stuff that I do is around like burnout. And so when you have all these things going on, that's one part of it, right? But then there's this piece of like kind of feeling like you're being gaslit, that like you see that the sky is blue, but someone's constantly telling you it's purple. And you're like, no, it's blue. And I'm also trying every way possible to show you that it's blue. But no matter what's happening, you're taking your time and you're taking up my space to tell me otherwise. So tell me a little bit about how that experience has been for you.
You know, I think so, Nikki, when I got elected, right, I knew, I mean, first of all, getting elected and winning, like I thought we were just not gonna win. It was just unbelievable. And when we won big, right? So I knew that my personality was something that the city was looking for, right? And so when January 6th came on, it was the day of the inauguration, and I did something that the mayor was upset about. I filled the halls, the whole city hall with people, right? And he was just like, this is not something that is done. You don't invite people to, and I'm like, the inauguration for the first Black woman? Come on. We are, and
like, that is something I do. Maybe it's not something of some, but it's something I do. Yeah.
Right. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to make a statement. And I wanted to invite everybody who never, like some people never even went to City Hall, but I wanted all the elected officials and the mayor to see these people matter. Okay. There may not be your traditional voters and you never had to pay attention to them, but let me tell you, right now, you're going to have to pay attention to them because they matter. And so for me, and that was a statement we made, and it was so important because I still talk about now, like I recently got in trouble because residents now have been emailing the mayor and the councilors about issues. And I'm like, so this is what they're supposed to do, right?
And official.
Right. And they're just like, well, girl, you're influencing them. And I'm like, no, I want people to start contacting you. I want them to hear you. I want them to be heard by you guys. And so I feel like that article got like a really big glimpse of what I go through and what the statement is that I'm trying to make. It's like, I can dominate the conversation. I could talk about the issues, but I'm really trying to do it on the sake of like, this is what the people want. And I know things have been done for 30, 50 years this certain way. And I was told that earlier this month, Nikki, after the Globe article came out, they were like, Gerly, your approach is wrong. And I said, well, what is the right approach? Let me know. Where does it say in the council rules where is the right approach? And everybody, I remember the meeting, the person was shocked that I was saying that. They were like, well, this is how it's been done for 50 years. And I'm like, well, I got elected. Things are going to be different. And it doesn't matter if I don't get elected next year, because that's the joke they're saying right now. But I'm like, I know no other councilor, no other elected official in the city is getting as many phone calls, messages, or emails as I am. So I know I'm doing something right.
Well, and even more so, right? Like even just the way you talked about it, that was like, if I'm not doing it for your financial power. I'm not doing what I'm doing for you to vote for me next time. I'm doing what I'm doing because you voted for me to be here right now. And the only way that I can show up as myself next time is to continue to lead the way I'm leading and have that speak for itself. Not whatever kind of people-pleasing dynamic that you're hoping I do, or, make other people in the room feel comfortable because it's been done the same way so they can kind of, there's a comfort in the ability for them to kind of tune out. If we all just follow and go into this autopilot mode, we don't actually have to think that hard about things. We don't have to move things forward in the way that Gerly is bringing to the party every time. We have to think, oh my goodness. And, I think there's something so beautiful about it, but also, the other piece of a lot of the work that I do around kind of generational shifts, right? From what I was reading, I feel like you might have, some generational dynamics in there, whether it be, well, this is the way my grandfather did it and my father did it, and so this is how I'm doing it, or it be, this is the way it's been done for however many years, whether or not they're related to me. And this idea that there are people that are coming from different generations than you. So you're coming in as a millennial with your whole, your perspective coming into the dynamic. And, when AOC came onto the scene, I just remember hearing and listening to all these podcasts, and I wrote this whole blog post about millennial bashing, because I was so annoyed with the fact that in the same way you were talking about women being just seen as pretty, and so therefore their thoughts and their opinions don't matter, millennials being seen as young, as lazy, as entitled, as all these things. So therefore those things cut them off before you ever hear what they actually have to say, because they actually, we have a whole lot that we have to say based on our experiences and how systems, structures, and rules aren't actually working for us and for those that are coming up behind us as well. And so, I think I'd love to hear a little bit, at least your perspective of just generationally, how that stuff's showing up. Even when you're talking about the text message campaign, to me, that's just like, hello, modern world, here we are.
Right. And that is what's going on, what I'm dealing with on the council. I know 100%, actually. It is, like, you know, when it's sometimes it's mind-boggling because I'm just thinking about like let's look at these issues and then let's look at what's going on today in our city and like let's figure out solutions. And
Yes.
and it's just it's way over their heads.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay, like for example, in that Globe article, when I listened to the counselor talk about what racism was and how he said there's no racism that ever happens in the city of Everett. And I'm like, this white Polish man, right, is saying that there's no racism in the city, because I always bring it up, right? And the only reason why I bring it up is because residents constantly tell me about their experiences. And I was just thinking, you know what? I actually don't think they know what it is. And that's when I realized, oh man, like I got to take a step back and I got to understand that this is something that is not what they're used to.
Yeah.
And they don't have an idea of what it is and how it's hurting, you know, our people. And so I was like, okay, let me try to figure out a way that, you know, and it's interesting because he didn't show up on Monday's council meeting. We had, last night, he didn't show up. So I was like, I wonder if, you know, but I wanted to reach out to him and have a conversation. Like, I'm going to explain to you. And it was interesting because the day that the Globe article came out, I was talking to one of my council colleagues, and he didn't know the Globe article came out. So I was like, okay, he's not mad at me. He's still talking to me. He still likes me. So I was like, you know, let's have a conversation real quick. And he's like, you know, girl, I just want to let you know, like, the concerns you bring up are great. I may not agree with you, but they're great. And I was like, yeah, so let's talk about racism. He's like, girl, I've been an elected official for 8 years, right? Nobody has ever talked to me about racism. Yeah. And I'm like, huh? I get talked about it like maybe 5-7 times a week, like almost every day. What are you talking about? And he's like, I'm telling you. And I was like, okay, give me 2 minutes. Nikki, I promise you, I literally just turned around and there was this guy who was so excited about me. He's always like super excited that I got elected. He's a black man. I said, can you do me a favor? He's like, what? I'm like, could you tell this counselor about your experience about racism in the city? And Nikki, for 20 minutes, he had at least 7 examples to give to this counselor. And I was
like
just
the last week. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I was just like blown away. And he was just like, and the counselor was like, girl, this is my first time. I've never had. And I was just like, well, that's why I need to be at the table. Right. That's why, because I get to hear these perspectives. And it's not that I'm young or old or anything like that. It's just about like, I get to hear these stories, and these stories matter, and we should be able to talk about them. And the people should feel like they're being heard.
And you're making yourself, I think that a big part of how you even just talked about how you focused your beginning time in your office was about being accessible to people, was being about meeting people where they are and being the representative of their voice. And so if you're in a position where people aren't feeling comfortable sharing their issues with you, it's not that those issues don't exist. It's that how do you position yourself so the people that you represent feel comfortable enough to raise those issues? It's like, you know, if you think about parenting, I'm not a parent, but you think about parenting, and if your kids are going through a whole bunch of stuff that you don't know about, it doesn't mean that it's not happening. It means that they're either trying to figure it out in their kid brains and their kid experiences, or they're learning about it from somebody outside of you and the value systems that you think you're instilling in your children. And so, or they're trying to, you know, they're trying to find it from their peers who are operating with just as minimal information as they might have. And so it's such an interesting thought that, you know, how do we come to the table and make it so people see the reality that you're operating from, even if they're not as accessible as you are? So, yeah. So I want to hear, so tell me, I know you've mentioned this a couple of times, and I'd love to hear about, I mean, I know I have my own kind of take on my Haitian background, but I've known you talk a lot about being a Haitian American and the pride about being Haitian, and very, very purposely saying that loud and proud for people to hear. Can you talk a little bit about like how important that is and why it's so important to be speaking about that in Everett?
So, you know, I think for a long time when Haitians and Latinos and Black Americans, everybody, right? When they started moving into Everett, it was an Italian-Irish city. And so they just had this negative, like, who are these people? Why are they coming into our city? And they all felt like they had to leave. So many of them left, right? And I always felt like, and I saw it because I've been in Everett since I was like 4 years old, right? So I got to see the transition, and it was just always this negative, like, Haitians are dirty, or they're not smart, or they're too loud, and there's all that. And so I remember whenever I would knock on doors, I'd be like, I graduated from Bentley University. And they would be like, what? You? And I'd be like, yeah, and I'm Haitian. And it was just
nice to meet you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I wanted it to change people's perspective that you don't need to, just because somebody's Haitian or Latino, right, or Black American, that they're dirty or they're not smart or they're loud, that they're just regular human beings like you and I. And so I always, every single time I'm speaking, I'm always like, I'm proud to be Haitian American. My parents immigrated here. They taught me these values. I'm so proud to be standing here in front of them. And I'm so thankful that I get to do that work that they wanted me to do, in a sense. So I always will talk about, because I'm always going to remind people, like, being Haitian doesn't mean that it has, like, for example, when President Trump was like, Haitians need to get out of here, right?
I can't.
It's right.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, what do you mean? We're contributing, we're helping, we're just like everybody else in this society. So please just respect us,
Yeah. And I think there's this, it's so funny. I feel like I can hear my dad behind me, because he called me the other day. So my dad's not like, no social media, none of this. And he calls me and he goes, I have something I want you to put out in the internet. And I was like, uh-oh, what does this mean? And he goes, I want you to just say that shithole countries only exist with asshole leaders. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, the internet's a big place for anyone to put it. And he's like, I don't care. I just need people to know that. And I was like, well, I know that. And I will tell people. So audience members, please, my father, it's so true. It's this experience of being labeled as something that is not human by somebody that is in such an extreme position of power that minimizes your ability. In the same way we were talking about objectifying women, the same stereotypes that are so unfounded and so baseless in so many ways. Right. To operate from them, you're doing yourself as a human a disservice, because in order to dehumanize somebody else, you're dehumanizing yourself. Exactly. And so there's so much about this that, like, I was trying so hard not to get all riled up, because, it's hot out. But, like, there is just this part of this that just feels so, it's such a disservice to yourself to operate from those ignorant stereotypes of people, and to be so shocked, right? So you're knocking on the door and saying, hi, I'm Gerly. I'm Haitian, and I went to Bentley, and people are like, wait, what? You? Huh? Part of me feels like I wish when people did that, they gave themselves a little bit of time and space to reflect on the interaction of why and how they felt the way they felt, so they could potentially put themselves in your shoes, but also wonder, like, why am I operating from such a limited toolkit of understanding who and how people operate?
Right. And I think that's what I'm dealing with on the council. It's like, I'm just trying to open people's eyes and be like, before you already made, I know you've already made your decision about me, but please understand and try to be open to what I'm trying to say, and not take it, I'm not supposed to say take it personally, but feeling in a sense, well, Gerly put it up, so I'm not going to be for it. I'm just like, let's think about our future. Let's think about what's at hand. And it's tough. And I always wonder that if I wasn't who I was, or if I wasn't as strong as I was, or if I wasn't the Black woman, or if I wasn't that, would life be a little bit easier? But then I'm like, no, I love this. This is fun.
Says the person who gets bored after all those things I said you do.
Right.
No, yeah, one of the things that I feel like is so important as we talk about this is to really acknowledge that, like, there is this dynamic for people, especially when you're bringing race into a conversation, or you're bringing any kind of oppression into a conversation where it's been silenced for so long. It's I've been through hard things too. Great. Nobody's saying you haven't been through hard things, right? Nobody's actually even talking about, when you're saying, well, if Gerly puts it up, I'm not going to do it. It's not about Gerly, and it's not about the other person, especially when you're in a position where you're representing constituents. So, Valerie Jarrett, one of the things, I've seen her speak a couple times, and I think she's amazing. And one of the things she was talking about being a leader is, using herself as the vessel in that position of power to be making the change for the people that have gotten her there. And so to say, when Gerly speaks, I'm not listening to her, is to say that anybody that voted for her, so that significant amount of people that voted for her, I'm not listening to them. Right? Even if she makes me feel a kind of way and makes me have to think about things I'm not comfortable with, like that kind of simplistic way of thinking is just negating an entire group of voices. You don't even know who those people are, but you do know they were a majority of the people that voted for that particular seat. Right. You're just saying, no, I'm good. I don't need to do that.
and that's what happens. It's sad. And that's literally, Nikki, what is happening in Everett. And I can imagine in other cities that is
Yeah.
and that's what I felt like going back to Philly, right? If you didn't have money, you didn't have a voice at the table. And I thought that was so wrong every single day. Like if you didn't have, it was like, I forgot what the max contribution was in Philly, but let's say it was $6,000. If you didn't have $6,000, you couldn't influence any policy. And I was just like, what? That's
And for
so
some
wrong.
people, $6,000. I mean, right now, $6,000 can take you very far compared to like what's happening in the economy. $6,000 is not, it's not pocket change.
Right. So
Right?
it's definitely interesting. It's definitely interesting. And that's why for me, like, I just always want to remember, Nikki, the people who really, really need this type of work. And it's even like with our small business with my husband and I, like the ice cream shop is catered to nut-free allergies, right? And it's cool and it's exciting to see kids and adults come in and be like, man, I finally get to have ice cream for the first time, right? And it's so nice. It's so cool to do something different and to continue that. And it's just like, we're not leaving people out. We're still providing good quality products. We just want everyone to be able to share it and have it. And so I love the work that I get to do every single day because it goes back to my heart and my mission. Like, I just want to help people and I want to make sure everybody feels heard.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm like, yes. So I feel like, I mean, I already know what motivated you to run for office. Here's a question. What is one of your multi hyphens? Is there another hyphen that you feel like either in the political sphere or beyond? I like to speak things into existence. So are there other things? I mean, I heard you mention some other endeavor that you're working on, but are there other things that that you're envisioning that you've got to kind of girly making things happen, putting it out there and taking the leap and letting the net show up? Like how, what else you got going on?
I want to change how people think they need to make money, particularly in real estate. I think it's so wrong how people feel like they can profit off of people. Like, I think housing, everyone needs a house, right?
Yes.
And you need a good place to live. Like, you should be living in a place where you feel comfortable, you can walk into, that's safe of crime, right? But for a lot of people, it's their way to make money and take advantage of people. And I want to change that mindset. And so my husband and I are working on this project where we're trying to like buy up some properties and hopefully get some people in and change their mindset about home ownership. And then change the mindset about renting out to people as well. And hopefully we could do it block by block. That's our goal, is to do it block by block. And and I'm still most likely going to make money, right? I'm still going to make money from it, but I want to do it in the way that I can know that I'm still helping people and I don't have to take advantage of them. So I'm really excited about that. And I don't know what title that is, because I don't want to be called a developer, because that would make me so mad.
because of what development, in the same way, right? That like politicians have this feeling about them and you're like, well, I'm just going to become, we use new paradigm. So like shifting the paradigm, shifting what the model of developer looks like, and creating a developer that's there to actually make it a better place rather than to make their pockets bigger.
Exactly. And and that's what I'm excited about that. I'm like investing a lot of time into that right now. And it's just, it's exciting.
Oh, that's incredible. And really, personally for me, one of the most important things is to have a home where you feel safe.
Right.
And where you feel like you're not worried about the stability of that house, the people around you being a safe place, whether that be a safe place, that no one's going to come in there, but also a psychologically safe place where like you walk down the hall and it's okay for you to be you. You don't have to be a certain way or do a certain thing. You don't have to worry about all these other things. How important it is for your home base to be a place where you can let go, because so many of us, when we go out in the world and, socially distanced go out in the world right now, there's so many other aspects of what we have to operate within to be in a place where we can show up as some part of ourselves. And so your home should be a place where you can just exist as you and not feel like someone's taking advantage of you or you have to put up that armor.
Right. It's that's everything. And it's, I guess it goes back to politics and business, the two things that I love, but I think it's it's important. And I saw the market. I see what's happening. I see how people are taking advantage of it. And I'm just like, I can be in it. I can do that. I can try to change the mindset. So
yes. Well, I feel like there's so many other things we could talk about. I'm like, I want to talk to you forever. I am so excited. So how can people get in touch with, support? What would be the best way? You know, listeners, I know that you're in love with Gerly because I am. How can people support you, follow you? What are ways for them to kind of connect with you?
Right. So I always tell people to go on my Facebook. It's so funny because my Facebook is like the most evil thing right now in the city of Everett. I've had 2 meetings about my Facebook and how they don't want me to post things.
Stop.
And it's crazy, Nikki. I'm just like, wait a minute, my First Amendment, right? Like what? And so I tell people just follow my Facebook. It's Gerly Adrien, right? And just like and comment and positive comments because they watching everything I do. My Twitter, I'm just my Congresswoman Ayanna Presley lectured me about my Twitter, and so I've been trying to get it up a little bit better.
You need to do more?
I need to do more. I need more followers. She got me like 500 followers in one day. So she was like, Gerly, you got to get on it. And my website is gerlyadrien.com. That's where we put a lot of content up. We're always putting up ideas, legislation meetings. I'm having a town hall on Thursday to kind of talk more about this and how do I feel. And so we're always doing stuff like that. So just being involved and just showing support. And also, like, especially as a Black woman and to all other Black women, if you know, to run for office, to manage a business is hard. And just words of encouragement is needed. It's just so important. So just saying, like, thank you for doing this, it means a lot.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, I mean, I've told you before, again, in my creepy stalking and my sending you things, I say thank you. Your existence changes so many people's lives, impacts my life, I can tell you that. But just you showing up every day as you is one of the most powerful things you can do in the world. And it's made an impact on me. So thank you. And I know for all of you listening, I hope it's made it, if you're here right now on this episode, it's made an impact on you. So go follow Gerly, go support Gerly, go tell people about it. Have her get those Twitter followers up so Ayana's happy. And I'm so beyond excited. So keep me updated on what's going on. We will share far and wide, truly.
Thank you.
And if you're based in Massachusetts, go to the Tip and Cow, have some ice cream.
Oh yes,
because
Somerville.
those flavors. First of all, I was like drooling looking at all the flavors you've got going on too. I'm so grateful that you were able to join today, and I'm so proud to be a fellow Bentley alum too. So thank you. And I'll talk to you soon, I hope.
Thank you so much.
Such a good episode, right? I can't even handle the whole, I had to stop making myself look pretty for people to hear me. I mean, I thought that those were thoughts that I just had about myself. And for so many of us, especially for the incredible women listening to this, I'm sure you felt that some way. I know so many of us have to put on these masks and these costumes to feel as though we can be seen and heard for ourselves. And I really hope that we get to a spot where you can show up and be seen and heard for who you are. And it really doesn't matter what you look like, because we all have something incredibly important to say in the world. We're in this space of, Zoom meetings and socially distanced interactions. And hopefully, because we've had to break down some of these barriers and some of these kind of pomp and circumstance things that we have to put out in the world in order to be viably okay, that this shift, this change, and this breaking down of some of the rules gives us the opportunity to fill in new rules that are more focused on the reality of what we actually need to do to show up, and not what we've been told we need to do, or not that are so outdated ways that we would have to show up that we've just held on to because they've been done before. Again, if you haven't yet, I encourage you to follow Gerly on all the things. We'll have links on our social media page if you didn't catch it in the episode. And also, if you haven't rated or reviewed this podcast, I encourage you to do so. If you haven't shared this with someone in your world or share this with your network, we really encourage you to do that as well. And then finally, the most important thing for us is to hear from you. So please do comment on social media if that's where you find out about this. We'd love to hear from you in the comments, or you can slide into the DMs and let us know what you think. Or feel free to send us an email. There's a link on the website for you to send us an email, or you can just shoot an email over to info@nickyinnocent.com, and we'd love to hear what you thought of the episode. All right, my friends, I will catch you on the next episode.